With regards to nerves, anxiety, and stress, our body has something called the fight or flight response. This is our body's natural way of coping and managing with something we perceive as a threat to our well-being. Now, this threat may not necessarily be life-threatening, but it can also be an uncomfortable situation, whether we're with people we don't want to be with, whether we are in a situation which we really do not want to be. We can feel, react to it. We can either we can engage the situation, we can tell the person, the people that we are disagreeing or we're unhappy with their presence or what they're saying. We can alternatively leave the situation and just let it go and move somewhere else. And alternatively, we could stay where we are and ignore the problem. There is a problem now with someone drilling in some other neighboring building, and I can either stop this podcast, I can just carry on, which is what I'm going to do, and ignore it, or I can go over and tell the guy to stop drilling. But of course I have no authority to do that, and he's actually in another building, on another adjacent building, so I'm not able to do that. So it's causing me an irritation, not a manic it's not causing me a manic sort of traumatic experience. Anxiety, not so much, because I know I can record this again. It's causing me stressful. It's a stressful thing. So when we talk about the fight or flight response, we're talking about when a situation arises that we don't particularly like. We can either fight it and engage it, or we can flee it. Flight means like a bird's flight, to leave the situation behind as a way of getting out of the situation that we don't feel comfortable in. There is a third thing called the fight, freeze, or flight. Now, freeze means to, as I was saying, to stay where you are, to freeze, to wait for the threat to go, to not engage in the problem, and rather than to walk away and leave the problem, you're just deciding to stay where you are. There is also a fourth F, which is called fawn, and fawn means to agree with the problem, to accept the problem, to not react to the problem, either reacting to engage the problem or deciding to extricate yourself from the problem. By extricate, I mean to take yourself out of the problematic situation. The problematic situation may be a physical one, or something that you're experiencing, something that is provoking and causing this unhappiness in yourself. But like I said, stress can be debilitating. It can interrupt and cause an internal anxiety, because we're no longer able to consciously consider, tolerate, create, and cope in a basic cognitive way. The fight or flight is about reaction, or in reaction. Sometimes it's better in life to engage in a problem, to tell people what you feel about them, to fix something, or to buy something, or to do something, to engage in that situation in order to take yourself to a better frame of mind. But sometimes in life it's also equally good to leave a situation, let go of people in your life, let go of the problem, to physically move yourself away from the problem and just let it go. And then another option, of course, another thing is you may want to just trust in yourself, center yourself, and neither engage nor disengage with the problem. Just ride it out. I talk about the idea of you have a hurricane, a cyclone, a tornado. They're all pretty much a maelstrom of wind, and the most peaceful place in the whole storm is in the center of the storm. They call it the eye of the storm. And in the eye of the storm, there is no movement at all, in fact, which is quite strange to think. But the center of a hurricane, there is very little movement at all. So being in the eye of the storm, you could go to the eye of the tiger, is to be in the center of all the problems and the things, but just to center yourself. And then of course to fawn. Now, if you're in a violent situation, an abusive situation, or you're with people that have intimidating personalities, you might not be an alpha female or male, but you're surrounded by people dominating people that always impose their ideas onto you and their concepts, and you constantly can feel yourself living in the shadow of someone else. Not a good place to be. So fawn, we call that fawning. It's just not standing up for yourself, or neither engaging or disengaging, but despite there is no benefit of just riding it out, but you're just allowing yourself to be, dominated by some other force other than yourself. This is what we call the fight or flight response. It's a response, a mechanism that our body has to defend ourselves and to cope with stress and anxiety. Now, we're going to look at how the fight and flight response affects our body, and how anxiety and stress can make us feel unwell. The consequences of living in a cycles of stress, of stressful situations, are fatigue, frustration, dissatisfaction, maybe physical injury included. We have neural plasticity, and what neural plasticity means is that we can change the way we feel and are. We can turn ourselves from stressful people into calm, peaceful, happier people, or at the very worst, reduce our anxiety, which is within ourselves, because we can rewire and reconfigure our neural system to a degree where we can turn off the nerves which are triggered, and we can just allow the nerves in our mind that will not activate and trigger these nerves and these nervous signals, because nervousness is due to nerves, stress is due to nerves. Nerves is a Latin word, it means nerve, but if you hear the word neuron, it's because that's an ancient Greek word. So the ancient Greek word for nerve was neuron, and the Roman Latin language called it nerve. So, what do I mean by that? So, this sparker You know, you may see, if you can see the flashes there, flashes, 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 flashes. When we're nervous, the nerves in our body, or parts of these nerves in our body, are triggered. Let's talk about the way the fight or flight response works. But when our nerves are fired up, as it's called, all sorts of things happen to our bodies. I believe by explaining to you what happens to our bodies, you will then be able to relate and understand, and the whole process is about engaging the problem of nervousness and anxiety. So by understanding things, I strongly believe that we are able to benefit from the whole process of engaging and learning in what the problem is. So when our body is in, say, a normal, rational, creative, cognitive, functioning body, reading the signals, reading around, respecting in our daily lives, we talk about that being in a homeostasis. It's the stasis. Basically homeostasis means that everything is working reasonably well, and all our decision making and such is going well. Now when we deviate from that, of this basic homeostatic position, our bodies are in equilibrium, we then become hypotension. Hypotension is when our bodies are unreactive, we can become depressed, we can feel melancholy and calm, and our body is non-activating. We don't feel any adrenaline, we don't feel any excitement, we become disinterested in people and things. It's called hypotension. On the other side, you have hypertension, and hypertension is when your body is overreacting, it's overworking, it's overcycling, and that can lead to cycles of high and low. You're revolving in this because your body can't be hypertensive, i.e. inflamed and engaged, on an endless daily, week in, week out, monthly, yearly cycle. It wears us out. So we're looking to go to a place where we have hyper cool moments and calmer moments, but we need to center ourselves so that we're basically running in the center of the two, not the extremes of one or the other. I'm going to look at some neuroscience. Bear with me. It's all about the process of recovering and readjusting your own mindset, the way you understand nervousness and anxiety, maybe trauma. And beyond that, hopefully you will never go there when we have panic attacks. So the fight or flight response causes our bodies to react in a particular way. And it is there, as I mentioned before, to allow us to cope with the perceived threat. Now, we perceive the threat, we sense a threat, we can maybe even hear a threat. For example, at a basic level, we can hear a tiger's roar, or we can see fire, or we can hear whatever you like coming. We perceive the threat. Now this signals a part of our mind, in the part of our brain called the amygdala. The amygdala means almond, nut in Italian, and the amygdala is a very important part of our stress and anxiety response, because the amygdala triggers the release of two different hormones into our body that I will explain to you what they do now. The most common one you've probably heard of is adrenaline, which in the United States is called epinephrine, and noradrenaline is norepinephrine in the United States. They have a different name for it. And then the second of that is cortisol. So the amygdala in your mind, in your brain, a physical part of your brain, perceives the threat, and it causes a cascading chain reaction in your body, which causes the release of adrenaline and cortisol. Bear with me. So, how does that work? You perceive the threat. Then the amygdala sends a signal directly to the thing called the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is what regulates hormones in your body. The hypothalamus has two reactions, different reactions. The hypothalamus sends a hormone in one of these reactions we look at first, which is how our body releases cortisol and what cortisol does. Okay, so the hypothalamus releases a hormone which isn't going to travel far. We're going down the body to the adrenal glands. Okay, release a hormone called corticotropic releasing hormone. You don't need to know the word, but it's interesting. And that triggers the pituitary gland, which is below the hypothalamus. It travels down something called the infundibulum. Imagine that. So the hypothalamus sends something down to the pituitary gland called an infundibulum, and that causes the pituitary gland to release something called adrenocorticotropin, which is a hormone. Now that hormone is then released into the bloodstream, your blood vessels. The hormone travels around until it triggers the adrenal glands. There are two. Ad means above, and renal is the technical word for your kidneys. Sits above the kidneys. We have two kidneys, two adrenal glands. Now that releases cortisol, not collagen or anything you want, but cortisol. Now cortisol, we're talking about our reaction to stress. Cortisol does several things to your body. It causes your blood vessels running through your body to constrict, which sends more blood to your heart, which enables your heart to beat faster to cope with the stressful situation. The other thing it does is it improves your ability to breathe, the hormone cortisol, to breathe and respire and get that oxygen into your body, which you need to oxidate your blood in the process of coping. It also shuts down your digestive system and your immune system, because the immune system is an inhibitory system, i.e. it holds back. So we're wanting to engage, either to engage to fight, or to react and flee, or to cope with the stress by freezing. So cortisol additionally causes your eyes to dilate. It causes a reaction where your eyes gain more strength. So cortisol does all of these things to your body to prepare yourself to fight. Now let's look at the other hormone, adrenaline. Now the hypothalamus, again, this control part in your mind, hypothalamus, it then releases, it's connected rather to two nerves running down your spine They're called Schlannick nerves. Schlannick nerves. And basically it's a nerve two nerves that run down to the two adrenal glands, and they run and connect to the adrenal glands. And in the adrenal glands, in the central part of the adrenal glands, it's called the adrenal medulla, there are cells called chromaffin cells which release and produce and release adrenaline and noradrenaline. Now, adrenaline is a hormone. It's again put into the bloodstream, goes around, and adrenaline causes the nerves to send their electric signals and the signals much more quickly and much more effectively. So all your nerves are activated by adrenaline and similarly noradrenaline. It strengthens your nerves. Now, why are the nerves in a fight or flight situation? Well, it's simple. Because muscles can't move without nerves. Nerves are what trigger the muscles to move. So if you want to move and engage, obviously everything involves muscles. Defend yourself, attack, get up, muscles. And so the nerves themselves release a small chemical called acetylcholine, and that causes the muscles to either contract or to expand. All movement depends on muscle contractions, a symphony of muscle contractions and expansions. You have a rest state and an action state, muscles. I find it interesting, the more you look into your nerves and what's going on in your body, then the more interesting and less worrying being worried is, the less nervous we become by understanding what we mean by nerves. So, on the one hand, cortisol is caused by the perceived threat in the amygdala, and the hypothalamus, via the pituitary gland, releasing a hormone, and the hormone called cortisol then causes, the hormone adrenocorticotropin hormone released by the pituitary gland then triggers the outer part of the adrenal glands to release cortisol, which then causes all these reactions in your body, making your heart beat faster, your lungs work more efficiently, your mind and your eyes to become more focused and sharp, and then also shuts down and saves energy, so it stops your body from digestion and also from your immune system going in. So it shuts down these operations to give yourself more energy to cope with the process of fighting, freezing, or flying, or fleeing. By flight, we mean to flee, to escape. And then the other reaction, of course, as I've said, it once travels through the nerve, the nerve, and then that then triggers your adrenal glands, the two nerves, to release adrenaline, epinephrine, if you're living in the United States. The problem with all this is it's fine if there really is a dangerous situation that we're in, but as we know, often our bodies are caught up in perceptual cycles of anxiety, stress. We become neurotic. We can become neurotic. Neurosis. What neurosis is it means you're so sensitive to the smallest things that you overreact rather, against something that isn't really a threat at all. For example, this is my green tea, as you may know from other podcasts. So if I have that there and say you came along into my space and you picked it up and moved it, or you walked away. Now, an overreactive thing, I would get really annoyed, angry. I would engage. I would become annoyed, stressed, and it is such a ridiculous thing to do that. So some people can have problems whereby small things trigger a stressful response. Just a small things a flick of a switch here, so they can flick. You can be triggered just by the smallest thing. It can set you off, they call it. When we say set you off, we mean a chain of stressful activity. Your body reacts because it goes into this position where it's releasing cortisol, it's releasing adrenaline, epinephrine, but there's nothing. It's overworking. It's on overdrive. Now, if you're living in too much stress and anxiety, your body will start to become fatigued and exhausted. Why? Because this whole reaction of your cortisol and your adrenaline will cause your white blood cells in your body, called the T cells if you prefer, they'll become tired, and your body won't be able to reproduce sufficient to then engage in disease and viruses and bacteria, because you've exhausted all these white blood cells in your state of anxiety, frequent anxiety, should I say. The other thing is that, as you know, all your body is composed of billions of cells in your body, millions. And in the center of every cell, well, normal cells, not nerve cells, there is the mitochondria, in nerve cells as well. The mitochondria is like a powerhouse of, it provides all the energy for all the other parts of your cell, in every single cell in your body. Now these mitochondria become tired, they become less efficient at producing energy, and the older you get, the less ability your body is to restore these engine centers in each cell, the mitochondria. So your whole body becomes tired and exhausted, and it's frustrating, and that exhaustion will perpetuate depression. So whilst the fight, engage, challenge is good, and the fleeing and the escaping is also good, and in dealing with stress, anxiety is good, remember that your body clock is doing so much in the background. The danger is it can stab you in the back, get you in the back, because you'll end up eventually feeling exhausted, depressed. We call it burnt out. You'll be burnt out. The candle of your energy in your body, if you like allegories, I love allegories, will blow out. You'll feel exhausted. One day your body will just say no, and you won't be able to fight off diseases and illnesses. You won't be able to recharge your body. I'm going to concentrate a podcast as in the ways and means to reduce anxiety and stress, or the things that trigger anxiety and stress in your life, so that you will not be fired up. We'll slowly through neural plasticity, which is your ability to transform yourself from a stressful person into a calmer, more stable, more peaceful individual. Because it's very rare that stress and anxiety will generate your happiness, and you may get adrenaline rush, you may get dopamine for your body, which is a temporary effect. So we'll look at ways and means to reduce the things in your life which are going to trigger you to go into the fight or flight response. Thank you for your interest. Like I said at the start of this particular podcast, it's really good to be, if you do suffer from stress anxiety, or you know someone, it's really an unpleasant place to be. So just by engaging in this process of understanding what's going on, we're dealing with it, and we're going to find the ways and means to overcome and to move out of stress cycles. I hope you liked this video, and do dislike it if you don't like it. Thank you.